The best handling trail bike ever. Well, that's what Santa Cruz claim about their mixed wheel, mid-travel 5010. So, ride with me at the legendarily janky trails of Stainburn to find out whether they're right or that's shite. So, mixed wheel, 29 the front, 27.5. That's new for the 5010. Used to always be 27.5. But the travel remains the same at 140 front, 130 rear. Head angle 64.9 or 65.2, depending on where you have the flip chip ahead of the shock. But while travel, wheel size and geometry, like head angle, are obviously super important, what really separates this 5010 from the normal and gives it that incredible handling that they're on about, and I'm happy to support, is the way they've actually kept the back end long for a mullet bike. Haven't tucked it right underneath for super radical handling. It's actually the same length as the tall boy, so it's really well poised, and then each length gets a separate layup for the frame, so frame feel is exactly the right balance throughout, and the kinematic on the suspension has less anti-squat than previous VPP, so it doesn't stand up as much under power, so it doesn't feel quite as kind of positive and punchy, but the way it can roll up and over square edges and roots like this is noticeably improved. And again, the handling balance, so that front end stays online, but you're still getting that advantage, different turn rates and scrub rates from the smaller back wheel, so it's still handier than a full 29er on really tight, techie, stally stuff like this. Right, in terms of model specifics, this is the Carbon C, so the basic carbon frame in GX axis reserve spec. So it's the older GX axis, it's not T-type, but you do get reserve carbon wheels, and Santa Cruz carbon bar is one of my favourite handlebars. So in far as I reckon, this is definitely one of the sweet spots in terms of kit. So you got faster shifting and maximum warranted components right through. Weighs 14.2 kilos in this large. I'm 5'11", if you're wondering about sizing, and that was a lot of fun. And it's something of a sweet spot in terms of suspension as well, because you've got that Pike Select Plus fork, which has still got the Charger 3 damper, but it hasn't got the bushings that seem to cause all the issues in the Ultimate fork. Riding around here, it just feels really smooth, silent, and very controlled. And then on the back, you got Super Deluxe Select Plus there as well, which means you don't get the low speed compression dial, but you still get a little climbing lever. Although, to be fair, I haven't felt the need to flick across at all. That VPP still keeping things nice and stable under pedalling. It's really nicely dialed in. Nice and sensitive off the top. So there's bags of traction. So even though there's less rollover with that smaller wheel, it still actually feels smoother and grippier on the trail than the tall boy did. And it's a very straight progression as well, so nice and sensitive at the start with that VPP, and then ramps up consistently all the way through. So once you're getting into the mid-stroke, you're getting into some reasonable firmness, and you're only going to get that full 130 if you really hit it hard. But it definitely doesn't feel like you're being shortchanged at all. You know, as cheesy as the Santa Cruz slogan is, you know, some say it's short travel, we just say it's enough. Definitely does feel like that for the riding around here. And because it's only 130, you can get away with that lighter category of fork. You know, your pike, your 34 aren't going to feel overwhelmed at 140 up front. This doesn't feel like it needs a 36. It's interesting comparing this to the Spectral 125. Very similar bike on paper, but I couldn't see, well, apart from its twin 29er, but it wasn't any lighter than the 150 bike. Whereas this bike, it's only 500 grams a pound, spec for spec, but just feels lighter and handier and more agile, and just more like an everyday trail bike you can ride from the door, still have a really good blast on. As a Bronson, I always felt like more of a big hitting play bike. And interestingly, the time I really liked that Spectral 125 Canyon was when I stuck a Mullet rear wheel in it. But that felt mint. But Canyon were very quick to ask me to take it off social media in that setup and take the wheel out as well. So there you go. Kind of almost invented this bike before, but this just puts it all together on a really well sorted plate. And not only do you get specific carbon layups, specific chainstay and front centre lengths for each size, and that lifetime frame warranty and the bar warranty, pivot warranty, stuff like that. You also get a full house of Santa Cruz practical features bingo. So you've got DIY serviceable collet bearing pivots with a grease guard in the lower link. Those bearings are in the linkages, so even if you do let them get too loose, you won't trash the frame. You've got glove box internal storage with tool, wallet and tube purse, or whichever way around it is, which you can store a genuinely useful amount of stuff in. You've got frame mounted rather than headset mounted internal cable routing with full internal trunking, so it's easy to get your lines in and out if you service it. And you've got that flip chip, which only has a minor effect on geometry, but it has a big effect on the suspension feel. Well, big in terms of Santa Cruz's super subtle standards. Just gives it, in the higher mode, actually gives it a bit more support in the centre. Kind of gets around the typical hammock of an air shock. So while I normally slam a bike and leave it at that, I've actually been running this 50-10 in high quite a lot of the time. And while tyre clearance at the back looks a bit limited at 2.5 compared to 2.6 on the Bronson. You can actually squeeze a 2.6 in here, especially the good old Schwalbe Rock Razor, which is my favourite Mullet speed additive. And on the subject of tyres, well, there's no doubt that max grip front DHR is an absolute speed killer and lung buster when you're trying to propel the bike yourself. When trail conditions get sketchy and slippery like they are now, having that gluey front end to make the absolute most of the stability of this new 5010 V5 really does work out well. Although I am definitely tempted to fit something lighter and faster to kind of recapture that real kind of hysterical hyperactiveness of the old V4. I mean, just listen to that tyre drag on the tarmac. And it's just this, when you can pounce and pop around. And I have to say, it's early days yet, I've not done a proper boulder run, but oh yes, complete pop and flick on the back wheel there. It just encourages you to have a laugh, misbehave, play around, you know. I nearly sacked this ride off because I'm rolling with a broken rib after a Bob Vylan concert. Not Bob Dylan, Bob Vylan. There's a big difference. But it's just the kind of bike that'll really put the fun back into your riding. I'm so glad I came out on it. And that tighter turning pivot on the rear wheel really helps on tight switchbacks. Plus you've got a really steep seat angle now that's slightly different on each side. And if you know how and when to shift to get a smooth change, I have to say, at the risk of losing my SRAM swag privileges, I actually prefer the ergonomics and the faster shifting of an older axis Eagle rather than T-type. The only real letdowns in terms of spec are the G2 brakes, which are pretty meh, even with a 200mm rotor on the front, and the RockShox reverb hydraulic post, which has already gone bouncy on only the fourth ride. That suggests the whole series of re-bleeds are going to be in its near future. But this whole bike is set up for rowdy rather than rolling on. So if you're looking for speed under pedalling, then you want the Tall Boy. So that's twin 29er, dissector tyres, and half a kilo lighter. So, in summary, is the 5010 faster than a high tower or a Tall Boy? No, certainly not with this front tyre on. Is it more capable than a Bronson or a Nomad? No. But does this amazing balance where they've really, I mean, there's 3 separate podcasts on the roller door pod from Santa Cruz about this bike. It's not just a cult favourite among riders, it's obviously a cult favourite amongst the Santa Cruz crowd as well. And I can totally see why. Because the balance and nuance, subtlety of this bike, while it's still being properly rowdy and a real hero machine in terms of how it makes it feel like you're riding, even on your rubbish days like today. It's just absolutely outstanding. So there you go, Santa Cruz 5010 V5. A bike that might not make a lot of sense on paper. It's not as fast as a 29er. It's not as capable as a longer travel bike. But by God, the detail they've put into this bike in terms of the way it handles, in terms of the way the suspension complements that, is just absolutely phenomenal. And they might well be right in saying this is the best handling trail bike that I've ridden. Certainly on super janky, technical, tight stuff like here at Stainburn. And as well as the way it handles, this particular model is a real sweet spot in terms of spec. Apart from that droopy dropper and the kind of underwhelming brakes, the faster acting axis gears, the Select Plus pike, reserve wheels, reserve bars. And while that front tyre might be the compound equivalent of COVID, and it's a kilo heavier, the traction, both front and rear, is significantly better, and it pedals fantastically as well now with that new kinematic. Plus, because it's such an outlier, Santa Cruz have got plenty of these left, so you'll get it at an absolute bargain price currently as well. My only worry is because maybe it's because it's such a sort of hidden gem in the lineup, it hasn't sold as well. And that might mean if they were going to just concentrate on the bigger sellers going forward, this might be the last we see of a bike with an incredible heritage that starts way back with the Blur 4-Cross, an absolutely legendary psychopathic combination of cross-country pedalling and flat-out brawler capability up front. But anyway, I'm rattling on. The key thing here is this. Definitely gravity biased in terms of a short travel trail bike, but if you like techie, steep, tight, but with enough suspension still left to properly get stuck into the trail and get a real sense of kind of achievement out of your most aggressive riding, then this 5010 is an absolutely phenomenal bike. Plus it's got all that practical detailing that will really stand you in stead long term. So massive thanks to Santa Cruz for letting me have this bike on test. The good news is I'll probably be hanging on to it a while, so I am going to be able to make those experiments in terms of switching tyres. I might change the fork as well, see if just how that Select Plus measures up against a Fox 34 or the new Manitou. I'll probably upgrade the brakes. I've actually got an interesting project on the way with Hope, which could deliver the perfect brake for this kind of bike. And there's a whole lot of other stuff I'll change. Not least the dropper's probably going to change. And look, you know, contact points. I've got loads of test stuff to go on from my work from Bike Perfect, so you'll likely be seeing that on this bike going forward. But for now, massive thanks to my normal channel sponsors. That's Giro Cycling UK. Apologies, I'm wearing mostly Enduro today, apart from the helmet, but that's just because that's what I'm testing at the moment, so apologies to the Giro guys for not being on point there. But massive thanks to them. Thanks to PT's Products for keeping me squeak free and squeaky clean. Thanks to Enduro Bearings, thanks to Crud Catcher, thanks to Hebtroco, and thanks to Talk Nutrition. Specifically their Defend anti-illness mixtures and vitamin D supplements, which are about the only thing keeping me going right now. So massive thanks to my Patreon subscribers as well, who pledge on a monthly basis. So if you really like what I'm doing on the channel, then please consider supporting me on Patreon, and you'll get early, exclusive and behind the scenes edits as a thank you. Plus, I hope a sort of higher level of rapport in terms of recommendations and buying advice, thanks to my experience as a bike tester. But if you can't do that, please subscribe, click for notification, and give this a thumbs up like, so YouTube you know he likes it. But most of all, tell your mates, because if you've enjoyed watching this content, then hopefully they will as well. But for now, I've been GuyKes on GuyKes TV in the glorious golden hour sun of Stainburn Trail Centre, raving on about the not as radical as it was
but maybe, just maybe, perfectly balanced modern trail bike that is the Santa Cruz 5010 V5 GX Axis RSV spec. Boom. Whew.